They called it a favor, a kindness, like it could be wrapped in a bow and passed across grief like it was a casserole dish, something meant to comfort. Just let her take it, my mom said, pressing my keys into Kayla's palm as if she had paid for that smooth red Toyota with her own tears. You don't need it as much now. You'll be home more. She said it in my kitchen, the counters crowded with untouched deli trays, the air thick with lilies that I could not bring myself to throw out yet. My father leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, jaw set like he was the judge and jury and clerk of court. My sister Kayla stood near the door with that smile you practice in the mirror, sad but expectant, a fence-sitting grin that has a future favor tucked behind it. The knot in my chest had a specific flavor, like metal and lemon and the stale sadness of days in hospital waiting rooms. I watched my mom tuck the keys further into Kayla's hand, and for a second the child in me, the one who used to give up slices of cake to stop a fight, started to reach. Stop, I said. My voice sounded like it had scraped itself raw on every mile we had driven to Ridgeport Regional. Give those back. Kayla blinked. Aaron, it's not just, I said. My eyes landed on my dad and then my mom, and I felt that old earthquake tremor move through my stomach. I was so tired. It was the kind of tired that lives in your bones and makes your thoughts come in through fog, and even still, the anger was a clean line burning through it. Behind me on the counter, next to the flowers and casseroles and cards that said all the wrong things, sat a thin blue folder. Inside was paper that did not care about size or guilt or years of being the oldest, strongest, easiest to take from. The paper didn't care that we had just buried Ellie. Paper only cared about signatures, dates, and the notary stamp from a woman named Nadine who had a warm laugh and kept peppermint candies in a glass bowl. My mom crossed her arms, a soft thud of bracelets against each other. We're trying to help. Kayla's been taking me to the salon, and back since. She didn't say the word. No one said the word. She needs something reliable. It's for family. I know what it's for, I said. I looked at my sister. You knew. Kayla didn't deny it. She just shrugged like it was all inevitable, like gravity and aging and the static you get from cheap sweaters. I texted you, and you didn't answer. We didn't want to bother you, so Mom said. You didn't want to bother me, I repeated, and I heard my own laugh, this small cracked thing, while I was picking out a child-size urn. Her eyes flinched, and for a second, she was my little sister again, the one who used to climb into my bed when there was thunder and promise to be braver tomorrow. But then she smoothed her face and glanced at Dad. He gave the smallest nod. Give me my keys, I said, quiet this time. No, my father said, pushing away from the doorframe. No, we're not doing your attitude today. Your sister needs a vehicle. You will not be cruel in this house. In the silence that followed, I could hear the hum of the refrigerator and the faint buzz of the fluorescent light over the stove. Outside, the late afternoon traffic on Maple Avenue flowed, steady, indifferent. I put my palm on the blue folder and felt its coolness against my skin. Okay, I said. You don't want my attitude. How about we talk about the Bureau of Motor Vehicles? My dad frowned. What? I breathed once, slow. The title. The registration. The fact that the car you're trying to take isn't mine. 3 pairs of eyes lifted to my face at once. Something new moved through the room, a rattle of confusion, then irritation, and beneath that, the smallest curl of fear. I slid the folder open and held up a copy of the title transfer. Her name on the line glowed like a lighthouse to me, Jenna Park. Exact, printed, clean. Not a rumor, not a pleading text, not a promise I'd regret. The car belongs to Jenna, I said. And she said no. Kayla's practiced smile fell. My mom's mouth opened. My dad took one step toward me, and the floor held its breath. This is the moment people think is the start. It isn't. It's the end of a long rope, knotted and frayed, tugged over years by hands that said the word family like it made them saints. It's the end of driving long nights with a sleeping child in the back seat, of watching my parents find more room in my grief than they ever did in my joy. It's the end of being easy to take from. Before it broke. My name is Erin, and I grew up in Ridgeport, Ohio. If you've never been here, picture brick factory buildings with their windows knocked out like missing teeth, a river that moves slow and brown in summer, and in fall, neighborhoods that turn to flame. Maples and oaks and sumacs collapsing into color. It's not a bad place. It's also not a dream. I was the firstborn. My mom, Diane, had me at 21 when Ridgeport still had a working paper mill and this contagious optimism that felt almost patriotic. My dad, Rick, wore steel-toed boots to work and a snapback cap that left a permanent pale line across his forehead. When you're a kid, your parents are just facts. They're the weather. You live around them. Kayla came 2.5 years later with a soft tuft of hair that stood like dandelion fluff and lungs that could outcry a siren. Mom always called her my little shadow. What she meant was, if I walked, Kayla ran. If I asked, Kayla took. That's not a judgment, just a description of the choreography we fell into. Families build habits like riverbeds. Even at 8, I was good at doing things right. I made the honor roll. I taped permission slips to the fridge and reminded Mom in the mornings. I folded laundry that wasn't mine. I could cook Kraft mac and cheese without boiling it over by the time I was 9. Kayla was good at making you want to help her. She had this mix of sweetness and rush that made otherwise sensible people put aside their own lists and say, oh, fine. I learned early that there are families who run on rules, and there are families who run on moods. My dad's mood was a barometer. The plant had layoffs. The kitchen went quiet. A neighbor parked wrong in front of our driveway. My sister got a new set of markers. My mom's mood was a slow-dripping faucet. You could ignore it for a while, but at night, in the dark, it filled the sink. In high school, I learned how to leave by staying late. AP English, student council meetings, cleaning up glue at the art club. All those activities with titles and newsletter mentions. Kayla skipped enough classes that the attendance office called our house often. Mom blamed the school and switched the conversation to how polite Kayla could be when she wanted. Dad grumbled about kids these days, and then left early the next morning to beat traffic like Ridgeport had it. At 18, I got pregnant. There were people who looked at me like I had become a statistic, another girl with a baby and a flimsy plan. But most days, my life felt like a glass door you could see straight through. I was going to Ridge County Community College and working nights at Luna's Diner while my belly grew and grew. Tyler stood beside me the whole time, his hand splayed on me like a map. He wasn't a bad guy or a disappearing act. He was the first boy who bought me a bouquet of gas station daisies and remembered the way I took my coffee. We were 19 when Ellie arrived. She came screaming and pink-cheeked into a February night so cold that the hospital's automatic doors shivered when they opened. She had my mouth and Tyler's eyelashes and the stubbornness of both branches of my family tree twined together. The nurses wrapped her and cooed, and I lay there and stared at her like she had invented blue. Parenthood is a magic trick the world shrugs at. You're handed a person who cannot hold her head up, and within days you can decipher her cries. This is hungry. This is bored. This is hold me because the air is weird. You think you're going to be exhausted forever, and you are, but the kind of exhausted that gifts you a new language. Ellie's was sunlight. Even her fussing had a rhythm I could dance to. At 3 months, she laughed while sneezing, and it became a family story so fast it was like it had always been. Kayla liked being Aunt Kay, always with glossy pictures uploaded and captions full of hearts. She brought over thrifted baby clothes with tags still attached and took selfies with Ellie while I washed bottles. It was the good version of us for a while. Summer evenings with Ellie in a bouncy seat on the porch, Kayla painting her nails on the steps, my mom making lemonade with too much sugar, my dad dozing in a lawn chair with his hat over his face. It was Tyler who noticed the way that my parents' generosity had corners. You do all the work and then they swoop in to decide things, he said one night while Ellie slept in her crib and the TV played low. He said it gently, the way you touch a bruise. I'm not saying they're terrible. I'm saying you deserve to decide. It's your life, Arn. I brushed him off. It's Ridgeport. People fall back into family like a habit. At 23, I moved into a 2-bedroom apartment above Coach's Pizza on Maple. The walls were thin, The stairs creaked, and the windows looked out on the kind of alley that collects both stray cats and misplaced lawn chairs. I loved it. It was ours. Tyler and I tried to be a family under that roof. We did all right for a while. But we were young, and love doesn't baby-proof a relationship. We drifted apart the way people do when they think they will always have later. He moved 15 minutes away, we shared weeks, then weekends, then homework duties. And still he came. He took Ellie to the park, read her library books in goofy voices, fed her alphabet pasta, and wiped her mouth with a clean dish towel because he stayed who he was even as we changed. The summer I turned 26, I bought the car. It sounds small, but if you have ever worked 2 jobs and gone home to cold leftovers and a kid with a fever, you know that a car can be a breath. I had driven a rusted Civic with a bumper zip tied on so long that when the loan officer at Ridge Community Credit Union approved me for a used 2019 Toyota Camry with under 50,000 miles, I cried in a cubicle with a view of the ATM. It was red. Not loud, just the kind of red that looks like it might be warm to the touch even in January sunshine. I took Ellie to the lot. She ran her hand along the door like it was a friendly horse. "Is this ours?" she asked, eyes wide. "It's ours," I said, and the guy with the polo shirt who handed me the keys smiled like he had seen this exact movie 100 times. I named it on the spot. Cherry. I know, not original, but I didn't need originality. I needed to get Ellie to speech therapy, to preschool, to Ridgeport Regional for the ear infections that seemed to breed in winter like rabbits. I needed to drive without listening for the engine to make a new noise that meant a new bill I couldn't pay. My parents did what they do. They made a big show of pride and a smaller show of discomfort. "It's nice," my mom said, eyes scanning like she was hunting for stickers on the back that might embarrass her. "Just be careful with money. Payment plans, they sneak up on you." My dad asked me the APR, like he had invented banks. He said it critical and impressed, a mix I had come to recognize as love disguised as the weather. Kayla sat in the passenger seat and took a boomerang video of the gear shift. She posted it with a caption, "Sissy's got a new baby." She was 19 then, half in, half out of cosmetology school. She had my mom's dream of owning a salon someday. She also had a boyfriend with forearm tattoos and a habit of driving too fast down Maple when the streetlights flicked to yellow. The first time Kayla asked to borrow Cherry, it rained so hard you could barely see your feet. She called from our parents' house. "My car won't start," she said, voice breathless like the rain was falling inside her lungs. "Can I take yours to the store? Mom needs groceries. Her back's killing her." I looked at Ellie sitting cross-legged with a coloring book, tongue sticking out the corner of her mouth as she concentrated on staying in the lines. 30 minutes, I said. I need it back by 6 to get Ellie to Jenna's. Jenna was my friend from high school, the kind you don't make a big show of love with, because it runs like plumbing in an old house. They're reliable, occasionally needing tape, but never failing for long. She worked nights as a nurse at Ridgeport Regional, and she and her husband Marcus watched Ellie when Tyler and I both had shifts we couldn't swap. That night, the rain made the whole town smaller, like it was folding in on itself, and Kayla blew into my apartment with a wet hoodie and wet hair and wet apologies. She took the keys like they weighed nothing. She came back at 8. "Traffic," she said, cheeks pink. "You ran by the depot," I said, spotting the bar coaster in the cup holder. "It was just one drink," she said. "Mom was fine. She took a pill. Don't be uptight. There are moments you mark and moments that slide." That one slid. I told myself it had been a long day. I told myself the groceries were more important than the bar coaster. 2 months later, Kayla asked again. Then she stopped asking and called me from Target to say she couldn't find her wallet. Could I Venmo her and she'd get me back, and she'd just borrow Cherry for an hour to drive over to Dad's buddy's shop. The lines blurred so gently that I didn't notice when it became normal for my car to not be where I left it. Tyler noticed. "You have to lock this up," he said, hands on my kitchen counter while Ellie built a tower of blocks. "You pay the note. You pay the insurance. If she totals it, who gets hurt?" "She won't," I said, because I believed in the best version of my sister like it was a job. He looked at me for a long second. "Okay." I didn't say yes that week. I didn't say no either. That was the rhythm then. Not quite permission, not quite refusal, a coastline where tides call the shots. The fall Ellie turned 4, everything changed, and it still took me months to see the shape of the new landscape. She was suddenly tired in ways that naps did not cure. She bruised easy, tiny maples of purple on her shins that I chalked up to preschool playgrounds and one clumsy fall. At dinner, she pushed peas around her plate like they were things to herd, not to eat. "Can I be done?" she asked, and she looked at me with eyes that seemed too big for her face. I'm not dramatic. I grew up in a household that treats extra as a threat. But that week, something ancient inside me stirred. The low fever that kissed her forehead and refused to pack up its suitcase. The way she dozed off on the couch while cartoons talked to themselves. One night, she stood in the bath, skinny legs and bony knees, and I saw a bruise bloom on her hip like it had been painted there. I drove to Ridgeport Regional the next morning. The waiting room chairs are molded plastic in cheerful colors that only make your fear feel louder. Jenna was on a different floor, but she texted me. "You there?"
"Yeah."
"You want me to come down?" "Yes." They took blood. Ellie cried and then stopped and asked the phlebotomist if the stickers came in purple. The doctor came in with that careful voice you never want to meet. Acute lymphoblastic leukemia. Words like a falling tree, the way the air changes when something goes from upright to not. Jenna had moved so fast the automatic doors couldn't decide whether to close. She stood in the corner, and I looked at her like she could give me a different word. She put her hand on my elbow. "Okay," she said, and she squeezed. "Okay." Chemotherapy is a liturgy of small humiliations. There's the port that breaks your heart the first time and then becomes part of your child's body, the way a scar does. There's learning to be the person who knows the nurses' names, the best chairs in the infusion room, which vending machines eat your dollar in a way that feels personal. There's the way time reorganizes itself. Work, sleep, money, they all rearrange around the fact that you live in 2 places now, your apartment and the 5th floor of a building that always smells a little like lemon cleaner and wet wool. I wish I could say my parents rolled in with casseroles and calendars and quiet hands. They rolled in loud. You learn in a crisis who needs to center themselves. My mom cried in ways that required an audience. My dad got angrier at traffic, at the price of hospital parking, at the way doctors explain things in terms of weeks when your heart lives hour to hour. Kayla posted a picture of Ellie's hand in hers with a caption about warrior vibes and a sword emoji. She tagged me without asking. In the middle of that first month, the credit union called. "We see a couple unusual charges," the woman said, voice light and businesslike. "A series of cash advances, but not from your card. It looks like a card in your name ending in 1357. I was half asleep in a recliner. Ellie was watching a cartoon on my phone, the volume low. "I don't have that card," I said, throat tightening like a fist. "Is there another authorized user?" she asked. "No," I said. She paused. "These are in your name." I felt that drop, the stomach losing you on a hill drop. I didn't open it. We sorted it out like you sort out a busted pipe. You shut off the main valve, call the number, fill out the forms. Fraud alert. Police report. I learned that a person you trusted could put small cracks in your life in between chemo appointments. I learned that your credit score can fall quietly, like dust. I didn't bring it up at the hospital. I didn't bring it up at my parents' house. I brought it up in my car with Jenna after one of Ellie's bone marrow biopsies, because your friend is the person you can be honest with when honesty feels like failing. "I think my mom did it," I said. "Or my dad. Or Kayla. Or all of them." Jenna didn't look shocked. She stared out the windshield at the gray parking deck. "Do you want names, or do you want a plan?" "Both," I said, and my voice cracked. She nodded. "We'll figure it out," she said. "One thing at a time." By Christmas, I had a binder. It was Jenna's idea. Tabs, medical, billing, legal, school. In the back there was a pocket for receipts, not because I wanted to be petty, but because I wanted armor. Childhood immunizations, the new schedule for maintenance chemo, the list of meds that made Ellie nauseous, the number of the social worker at Ridgeport Regional. I added the fraud report. I added the letter from the bank that said the card would be removed from my credit report within 90 days. I added the $476 in cash, withdrawals no one admitted to, and labeled it reminders of what I know. My parents called less to check on Ellie and more to tell me what I owed. We drove to see you, my dad said one Sunday night. Gas isn't free. You ate the casseroles I made, my mom added, voice sharp. I could have taken them to church for families who appreciate it. What do you need? I asked because even as a mother, I was a daughter first in their house.
They told me.
It wasn't a lot. It was always enough that the ground I was building shifted a half-inch under me. I paid. Then I stopped paying one day for the smallest reason. Ellie looked up at me with a hospital band on and said, Mom, I want noodles. And I realized I had $8 in my checking account and my parents had my wallet upstairs. It wasn't dramatic. I took back my wallet. I went to the cafeteria and bought noodles. When I came back up, my mom looked hurt like I had insulted her personally. You don't trust us? I sat down and opened Ellie's carton and blew on it to cool it down. I love you, I said. Stop taking my things. That was not the break. But if you walked back to it from later in the story, you could call it the crack where light got in. The weeks blurred into a string tied tight around a post. I measured time by infusion schedules, and by the way Ellie's hair came out in my hand in soft, shocking clumps, like shedding a season all at once. She handled it the way kids do, grieving in small, concentrated bursts. She cried when she realized the ponytail she wanted wouldn't work. She asked if we could get her a hat with a cat face on it. She told me she didn't want anybody at school to make fun of her. She looked at me for an answer I didn't have. People might say dumb things, I said. We can't stop them from being wrong. We can only choose how to carry it. I am going to be right next to you. She nodded like she was filing that away. She let me buzz the last of it, and after, she ran her hand over her head, eyes widening. I'm smooth, she said, grinning. I feel like a marble. If you want to know what tethered me to this earth at a time when everything wanted to float, it was the way Ellie found words. The smallest voice can reframe an entire room. Her, I feel like a marble, turned the hour into a joke. Her, I'm tired of being brave today, pressed pause on my performance of strength and gave me permission to sit beside her and be small. If the world was made of people like Jenna and Marcus and Tyler and Ms. Patel, the social worker who kept showing up with ideas for grants and gas cards and forms I didn't know existed, things might have been easier. But Ridgeport is made of people like my family, too. People who believe they are owed the front row to your life because they were there when you started it. Kayla got a new boyfriend at the start of spring, Jace. He had a motorcycle he called a bike, and a smile that looked a little like rolling dice. He worked construction when there was work and griped when there wasn't. Kayla changed her hair twice that month and borrowed Cherry 3 times without leaving a note. Keys, Tyler said one Friday night, looking me dead in the eye like he was reading my thoughts. Where are they? On the hook, I said, reaching for them. They weren't. We did that thing you do when you're looking for something you can't afford to lose. You check all the places that don't make sense. The freezer, the toy bin, the pockets of a coat that didn't go out this week. They weren't there. My phone buzzed. I have the car, Kayla texted. Don't freak. Going to the lake. Be back late. I felt that stupid little clutch of panic. You have Ellie's car seat, I texted back. Then, bring it back. Now. She didn't answer for 30 minutes. When she did, it was, just borrow Mom's old one. There are times to be polite and times to be precise. I took a breath. Kayla, I wrote, thumbs shaking. This isn't okay. You can't take my car without asking. Ellie has chemo in the morning. Then ask Mom to drive you, she wrote. I'm doing something for myself for once. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. Tyler took the phone from me, scanned the messages, and then looked at me with that face he gets when he has decided something. I'm going to get it, he said. You can't. I can, he said, already slipping his shoes on. Tell me where. She was at the lake, of course. Ridgeport is a town where the lake is where you go to feel like you aren't in Ridgeport for half an hour. Tyler found them, Kayla, Jace, and 2 friends. on picnic tables with beer cans that glowed like badges in the sunset. Tyler is not big, not a fighter, but he carries a kind of quiet that can be scarier than a shout. He walked up, asked for the keys, and when Jace laughed, Tyler didn't. He held out his hand until Kayla put the keys in it like she was a child, and he was a substitute teacher. He drove Cherry back like it was a rescue mission. He took the car seat out and set it against the wall, then handed me the keys to my own life. He didn't say, "I told you so." That is a kindness I will remember until I forget everything else. The next day, my parents called me into their living room and sat on the couch like a tribunal. "You embarrassed your sister," my mom said. "You sent your ex to confront her at the lake." "She took my car," I said. "I needed it to get Ellie to the hospital." "There are other ways to get around," my dad said, chin lifting like he hadn't walked anywhere without muttering in 10 years. "You're so rigid, Aaron. We're trying to keep things normal. We're trying to make sure this family stays together." Families use that word like duct tape. Together. They want flexibility to be a one-way street. The hospital bills rolled in like a tide. Ms. Patel sat with me and helped me map payers and programs. "You're doing everything right," she said, tapping a sticky note that said "Call Medicaid Recertification" in her neat, quiet handwriting. "You're working. You're showing up. You're keeping records. Let me call legal aid for you about the credit cards. They can help you get a freeze on your credit." I nodded because you learn quickly to say yes to help that doesn't cost you while learning to say no to help that does. I locked my credit. I changed my online banking password to a phrase I wouldn't forget, but no one would guess. Ellie Marblefield. I bought a safe at Walmart for cash and documents and kept it under my bathroom sink because no one in my family looks there unless they're sick. I told Kayla she could not drive Cherry under any circumstance until further notice. She rolled her eyes and said, "Further notice from who?" As though I were a substitute teacher herself, and she could just wait me out until a real person came to give her what she wanted. She got a DUI in May. When she called me from lockup, she had a voice like a child busted stealing lipstick. "Can you come get me?" "I can't call Mom. Dad will kill me." "Please." I was in the infusion room with Ellie. Her port had been accessed, the tape over it neat and white, the tubing looped like a cursive letter. She watched a cartoon with the sound off, fingers tracing the same line over and over on a scratch and sniff sticker book. Jenna stood at the nurse's station charting. I could see the baseball game on the TV in the family lounge through the glass. Summer had sprung in Ridgeport and narrowed people's thinking to yard work and hot dogs. "I can't," I said. "I'm at the hospital." Kayla exhaled, a long hiss, then went small. "I'm stupid," she said. "Please. Don't tell Mom." "I won't," I said, even as my brain said there is nothing you owe to this secrecy. "But I can't come." She hung up like I had slapped her. My mom found out anyway and spent 3 days texting me lines of blame like they were fortunes from broken cookies. If you had been a better example. If you weren't so stingy with the car. If you weren't always making everything about you. People say cruel things so casually when they're used to you absorbing them. The truth is, I did let it slide for years. But the thing about a child with cancer is it rearranges your tolerance. I stopped having any appetite for carrying other people's unprocessed stuff. That summer, my dad began to show up at my apartment unannounced, as though the front door was a suggestion. He'd bring little things I didn't ask for. A bag of frozen burgers, a 6-pack of beer he'd drink on my porch, a plastic container of leftover potato salad with onions I'd pick out later. He would stand in my kitchen with a beer and remind me of what he had done. "This is me showing up," he said. "This is family." One afternoon, I came home from the hospital with Ellie half asleep in the back seat and found him under my sink, fixing the leak. There wasn't one. He had found the safe. He was holding the safe like it was a clunky purse, like he had the right to its contents. "Where's the key?" he said, not looking at me. "Put it back," I said. "Don't get dramatic," he said, prying at the hinge. "You've got everything locked down like you're a spy. We're trying to help you. You won't even tell us what's in this." "Bills," I said. "Cash. Ellie's birth certificate. My stuff. Put it back." He gave that laugh that's not a laugh, just a sound to fill judgment. What are you hiding from you? I said. Boundaries. He looked at me then, eyes sharp, and for a second, he wasn't my father. He was a man who had spent his whole life not being told no. He set the safe down hard enough for the contents to thump. Don't be a smartass, he said. People are trying to help you, and you're acting like you're special. I am special. I didn't say it out loud, but the thought surprised me, like turning a corner and seeing yourself in a mirror. Not special like better. Special like every person is. Which is to say, worth basic respect. I didn't kick him out that day. I wish I could say I did. I stood in my kitchen and watched him drink a beer and tell me how hard his day had been. I counted to 50 in my head and imagined a future where my home didn't feel like a battlefield dug into a couch and a chipped Formica table. Ellie turned 5 in September. We had a cupcake at the nurse's station. Ms. Patel brought her a dinosaur sticker as big as her palm. Tyler took her to the park and let her slide down the slide, even though she was tired halfway up. He carried her on his back and she put her hands on his cheeks and said, "Faster, horse." When we got home, there was a note on my door. In my mom's careful cursive, "We borrowed the Camry. Urgent errand. Be back later. Love you." A smiley face. My keys had been on the hook. They weren't now. Kayla had gotten her license back with restrictions. My mother didn't have a car that would reliably make it 2 miles, let alone 3. I called, but she didn't answer. I called my dad. He didn't. I texted, "Bring my car back now. Ellie has an appointment at 8 a.m. No response. I put Ellie to bed, and I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea I didn't drink. When the headlights finally slid across my living room, it was near midnight. The door opened, and my mom came in with a bag from a strip mall boutique, Kayla following with a pair of boots in a box she held like a baby. My car smelled like cinnamon gum and the cheap perfume Kayla wore when she wanted to seem expensive. "Urgent," I said. "We needed to pick up a few things," my mom said. "Don't be petty, Erin. You're always so proprietary with that car. It's just a vehicle." I took a breath and kept my voice even. "If it's just a vehicle, stop taking it." Kayla hugged the box to her chest. "We're helping you all the time," she said. "You act like you're the only one who has a life." "Get out," I said, and felt something click, like a deadbolt sliding. "Get out of my apartment." My mom's mouth dropped open. "Excuse me?" "Get out," I said again. "And do not take my car again without permission. You ungrateful." "Out." "Fine," she said, tossing her hair in a way that would have been funny if I wasn't shaking. "Come on, Kayla." We tried. The door closed, and I put my forehead on the cool wood of the cabinet for a second and breathed. I changed the locks the next day. I had to ask Marcus to help. He came over with his toolbox and a quiet smile, and they sat on my floor while he swapped out the deadbolt. Ellie handed him screws like she was in on a secret operation. Jenna made grilled cheese. We ate cross-legged and laughed in the easy way you do when you know you are safe for an hour. I told my parents I had changed the locks. My dad called me dramatic, and my mom called me cruel. "What are we supposed to do? Stand outside if there's an emergency?" she asked. "Call," I said. "Like normal people." Normal. That winter, Ellie got an infection that turned into a week in the hospital. Her immune system was a fragile thing made of soap bubbles. We sat in the room with the beeps and the coughs from the hallway and the way the HVAC hissed. Kayla visited once, took a picture, texted me later to ask for gas money. I Venmo'd her $20. Then I stopped. The next time I wrote, "I can't." She wrote back, "You used to be nice." I held Ellie's hand while she slept and whispered, "We will be more than nice. We will be honest." I started carrying a tiny notebook. Every time my parents took my car or asked for money, every time they showed up unannounced, every time something small disappeared from my apartment, Tylenol, stamps, a roll of quarters from the jar, the stainless steel travel mug I loved, I wrote it down with dates. It was not to build a case against them in a courtroom. It was to build a case for myself in the courtroom of my own mind, where I had been losing for years to the plaintiff named It's Not That Bad. I learned phrases from Ms. Patel and from the legal aid lawyer. She introduced me to Laura Chen. You can put a lean-on title, Laura said one afternoon, her voice even and her hair pulled back in the way of women who get things done. You can transfer ownership entirely if you need to, but then you will need to carry insurance in a particular way. There are also powers of attorney we can set up for your medical preferences for Ellie and for yourself, so if you're ever incapacitated, decisions go to the person you choose, not the loudest person in the room. The loudest person in the room, I repeated. It was a joke that wasn't a joke. Laura smiled with her eyes. Paper is power, she said. Not because it's magical, because it is boring. And boring is hard to argue with. I sat with that. Boring as armor. Receipts over rumors. Paper over pleading. It was early spring when I went to the Ridge County Title Office with Jenna. We wore masks because the waiting room had a cough in it. We took numbers and sat on molded plastic chairs that reminded me, weirdly, of the hospital. When they called us, Nadine the notary looked like she could be a cousin mid-50s, kind eyes, perfume that smelled like vanilla and memories. I signed. Jenna signed. We paid sales tax on a token amount that we'd agreed on a real sale because Laura said not to cut corners even if no one would look. Jenna bought Cherry for $500. It was legal and it was real. She added the car to her insurance policy. She handed me a copy of the new registration and because she loved me, she gave me a key and said, "Drive it. You need it. We're just making sure no one can take it from under you." I walked into the sunlight and felt 10 pounds lighter in my shoulders. It was still my car in every way that mattered. I drove Ellie to the hospital, to speech therapy, to sleepovers at Jenna's when I needed 4 hours of uninterrupted inhale. But it wasn't mine in a way that made it vulnerable to a temper. That mattered more than I knew yet. When I told Tyler, his mouth did that slow grin. "You're learning to be a lawyer," he said. "I'm learning to be a me," I said. He nodded. Same thing. The line crossed. The night it broke, for real, did not start as a battle. It started as a birthday party. Ellie turned 6 in February. Snow fell in the morning and then stopped, leaving the world coded and quiet. We weren't supposed to be at the hospital that day, a grace that felt like someone had opened a window in a stuffy room. Tyler and I planned a small thing. Cupcakes, hot chocolate, a paper banner that said 6. Like it was a command. Jenna brought a Polaroid camera and a bag of dollar store crowns. Marcus lugged his speaker and made a playlist of songs that made Ellie laugh. We were going to be simple. We were going to do more than survive. My mom insisted on coming. She would bring real food, she said. My dad proposed handling the music because his phone had a playlist of old rock that he said kids should hear. Kayla promised to come late because she had to help a friend. I said yes to all of it because I still believed that a happy day would invite better behavior. It instead invited expectations. At 3, the door opened and my parents came in with a tray of meatballs and a complaint about parking. The security guard looked at me funny, my dad said, like that justified him stomping through my kitchen. He set the crock pot on the counter without asking where to plug it and barked at Marcus to move the speaker out of the way. My mom fussed over Ellie's hat, even though the hat was perfect, and Ellie loved it. "Is that paint?" she asked, scrubbing at a mark that was part of the hat. "I brought you a better one in the car." "It's the one she picked," I said, because that mattered more than anything. Ellie chose her hat. Ellie chose the exact color of store-bought frosting and the animal-shaped sprinkles. Ellie chose the song we played when she blew out the candle. Kayla arrived like a storm you can see coming from 2 counties away. Boots to her knees, hair perfect, a jacket with a faux fur collar. She smelled like coconut and cold air. She didn't hug Ellie right away. She took a video, posed, made the kid smile twice for 2 different angles, then said, "I brought her a real present," like everyone else had brought decoys. "I like the crowns," Ellie said, fingers busy with a rainbow one Jenna had placed carefully on her fuzzy scalp. Kayla rolled her eyes, so quick she thought I didn't catch it. We ate cupcakes. Ellie got tired and lay on the couch with a dinosaur blanket and her head in my lap, because even superheroes need their person to be a pillow. The room lowered its volume without me asking. I traced tiny circles on the back of Ellie's hand, my brain on that sludge-bright track it had learned, grief and gratitude mixing in equal parts. When Tyler stood to change the song, he realized he'd left his keys in his coat pocket in the front entry. He went to grab them, came back, and tapped me on the shoulder gently. He held up Kayla's purse. The spare key to Cherry sat in the bottom. I knew because I was the one who had it there a month earlier, hidden under a bag of Jolly Ranchers I keep for low-sugar emergencies, the candy wrappers like a rainbow trap. My eyes tracked to the front door. The hair on my neck lifted. "Where's the car?" I asked. "In the driveway," he said. He looked at me with recognition. He had the same breath-dropped feeling I had. Kayla came in from the hall. She flicked her wrist to close her compact and caught sight of Tyler holding the key. "Can you put that back?" she said, too casual. "Please." "You are going to take it," he said, not a question. "I was going to move it," she said. "It's in the driveway," he said. "Okay, Aaron, my mom said," voice warning. "Let's not make a scene." "Don't use that voice," I said, quieter than my pulse. "The one you use when you want me to be small." Kayla reached past Tyler, grabbed the spare key out of his hand like it was a baton she could snatch mid-race. "It's fine," she said. "I'll take it around the block." I stood. I felt the room tilt. I've fainted twice in my life, in a high school assembly when the air was too hot, and once when a doctor explained a lumbar puncture and my brain decided to check out before my daughter had to think about it. This was not that. This was anger turning to steel. "You're not driving that car," I said. "You do not have permission." "Aaron," my dad said, anger gathering like a thunderhead. "You will not talk to your sister like that under our roof." "This is my roof," I said, and I didn't shout. "And the car isn't mine." No one heard the last part at first. The words landed and slid off like water. Kayla's hand landed on the doorknob. I took 2 steps and put my hand flat on the door. We stood there for a beat like 2 kids at a playground standoff, except one of the kids had a legal file on the counter and a nurse watching with her mouth a thin line. "Stop," Jenna said then, voice full but calm. She picked up the blue folder and held it like a newborn, careful and solid. "We're not doing this." "What are you even doing here?" my dad snapped. He has always had an instinct for the wrong enemy. Jenna looked at him like he was nothing to climb. "Being the person she asked to be here," she said. "Enough," my mom said. "We're taking the car. Kayla needs it. This family comes first." "No," I said, and that was when I smiled. This small, surprised smile at how easy it was to say. "My family comes first." I walked to the kitchen, opened the folder, and slid the title transfer onto the table. The new registration sat behind it. I turned them both so the names faced my parents so they could read the words and see the signature line for seller with my scribble, the notary stamp, the date. "This is a joke," my dad said. He didn't move closer. He didn't need to. He could do disdain from across a room. "It's legal," Jenna said. "We checked. Twice." "Whose car is it?" my mom asked, squinting like the words were small on purpose. "Mine," Jenna said. "Mine to lend to Erin when she needs it, which is almost always. Not yours to take. Not Kayla's to joyride. Not a family resource. Not a toy." Kayla laughed, high and brittle. "You're being dramatic." "Dramatic would be calling the police to report an attempted theft," Jenna said, and she didn't blink. We stood in the thick of it. The distance between the person you used to be and the person you are is measured in moments like that, moments where you don't need anyone to validate you because the paper does the work. My parents looked from the paper to me to the paper again. I have sometimes wondered if the moment hurt their necks. "You did this behind our back," my dad said. "Yes," I said. "Because I have learned." "You do this to your own family?" my mom asked, voice wobbling now like she'd found the puddle tears could fill. "I did this for my daughter," I said. "I did this for my life. I did this because the last time you borrowed my car, I missed a medication pickup and we spent 3 extra hours in there and Ellie slept on a plastic chair while we waited for an attending to sign a form he should have signed at 5. I did this because you think my boundaries are suggestions." The air went thinner and thicker, a weird trick of grief and relief. Kayla put the spare key in my hand. It was hot from her palm. This is insane, she said, and she said it quietly, as if saying it softer would make it more reasonable. Nobody took a plate of meatballs. The crock-pot warmed air and gloopy sauce as if to fill space. Ellie rolled onto her back, looked at us, and said, "Can we be done now?" Her voice cut through everyone's noise like a bright ribbon. "Yes," I said. "We can." The plan or the breaking point. After that day, there was no pretending to return to how we were. My parents tried. They called me with demands cloaked in concern and comments cloaked in guilt. I had a new word: no. It's funny how short it is, and how heavy. "Can we borrow the car for your mother's hair appointment?" my dad would say.
No.
"Can you watch the dog while we go to the casino?" my mom would ask.
No.
"Can you spot Kayla 100 for her phone bill? It's important."
No. No. No.
There were variations, of course, because saying no does not mean you are cruel. It means you are careful. But I stopped translating my refusals into apologies. I can't became I won't. I wish I could became that isn't going to happen. I wrote the phrases down in my tiny notebook like spells I could say when my brain wanted to be a diplomat and my heart needed to be a border guard. Laura Chen met with me twice that spring in a cramped office with a humming fluorescent light. She looked like she ate practical lunches, the kind you put in a glass container and microwave without pretending you're above leftovers. I liked her immediately. "I don't need to sue anyone," I said that first meeting. "I just need to not go broke or break."
"Fair," she said.
"We can do both. Have you thought about a small trust for Ellie? People are going to send money. People always do. You don't have to open an avenue for your family to send you their opinions with it." Ms. Patel had told me the same thing. I thought about the checks with memos that say things like "for sweet Ellie," and the way my mom would pocket one if the envelope looked sturdy. "Yes," I said. "I want to do that." We set up a separate account with 2 signatures required, mine and Jenna's. It wasn't about mistrust of Tyler. It was about checks and balances and a system so boring even the most manipulative person would get tired reading it. I arranged automatic payments for hospital parking. I asked my boss at the diner if I could switch to day shifts when I wasn't at the hospital, and he said yes with that look like he was proud of me for asking for work and for rest. Lori, the manager, picked up 2 nights and handed me $20 bills some afternoons for gas, and a hug that stuck around for hours like a warm sweatshirt. At home, I rearranged the living room. I moved the couch away from the window, so the street felt less in my lap. I put the safe in a different spot and bought one of those outlets you can switch off for the power strips. I told Tyler he could let himself in when he picked up Ellie because he never took anything that wasn't his. "Your dad is going to blow," Tyler said gently.
"He already did," I said.
"You know what I mean." "Yeah," I said. I'm tired of building my day around that inevitable weather system. The day he did blow, that is, was a Tuesday in early May when the magnolia on Maple started to drop its flowers like spent fireworks. There are things you don't expect to become a memory, but the smell of wet magnolia was what I associated with anger after that. I came home to find my dad in my hallway, fists on his hips like he was posing for an ad for a brand of beer that makes men nostalgic for their own adolescence. He wasn't alone. A small, round man in a cheap suit stood behind him, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. My mom hovered in the living room with a paper folder. Kayla sat on my couch with arms crossed so tightly they looked like they might fuse. "What is this?" I asked, keeping my voice low because Ellie was in the bedroom coloring. "An intervention," my dad said. "On what?" "Your attitude," he said. "And your lawyer nonsense. And your betrayal of this family." "Hi," the round man said, stepping forward with a smile that did not reach his eyes. "I'm Arnold. Your parents." "No," I said, and the words seemed to surprise even my vocal cords in how firm it came out. "You're not needed here." "I'm a mediator," he said. "You're a friend of my father's from the plant," I said. "Please leave." He blinked. "It's free." "Great," I said. "Free is not the same as welcome. Please leave." He left because I said it with a voice that makes people move sometimes. My mom widened her eyes. "You're embarrassing," she said. "Imagine how I feel," I said. Finding people in my home, uninvited. We've always had keys, my dad said, like a fact was an argument.
Not anymore, I said.
And if you have a copy, that's a problem. He pulled a key from his pocket and dangled it. What's the problem? I stared. You have 30 seconds to hand me that key, or I will call the police. Nobody moves toward the nuclear option in families quickly. I had spent a decade threatening myself with that line and not saying it. But a certain level of intrusion, the kind that makes you feel like your skin is too tight, requires something sharp. That's ridiculous. My mom started, but something in my face must have communicated that I was not bluffing. My dad tossed the key on the table. It clattered. Kayla looked between us like she was bored, which might be her version of terrified. Why are you here? I repeated, calmer. You need to stop this legal thing, my dad said. People in town are talking. You're making us look like we don't take care of our own. I laughed. I couldn't help it. It came out like a bark. You know what makes you look like you don't take care of your own? He blinked. Showing up at your daughter's house with a stranger to bully her while her kid is in the other room, I said. Opening credit cards in her name. Taking her car. Taking her money. Acting like her new boundaries are a personal attack. My mom's mouth twisted. Well, maybe if you hadn't had a baby so young, you wouldn't be in this position. There it was. The knife parents sheath until they think you won't ever suspect them of using it, because it's old and untrue and meant to degrade, not to fix. Get out, I said again. It was a sentence I was becoming fluent in. My dad scowled. We're your parents. I know, I said. And I am Ellie's. He held my gaze for a long time. Then, as if we had both decided simultaneously that arguments were a waste of fuel, he turned and walked out. My mom huffed like a cat. Kayla stood, rolling her eyes and then letting them land on the blue folder at the edge of the counter. You think paper is going to fix you? She asked, and it came out small in the doorway. I think it's going to fix you, I said. She scoffed, but she left. After I locked the door, I sat on the floor in my hallway and shook, because bodies know you were threatened even if the threat was just a familiar face with a new angle. The shaking stopped when Ellie patted out and leaned against me, warm and small. Mom, she said, can I have grilled cheese? Yes, I said, and right then that felt like enough of a plan for a lifetime. We coasted, if you can call it that, into summer. Ellie had good days where she ran at the sprinkler and laughed when it made rainbows. She had bad days where the world was an uphill thing, and everything she ate tasted like the metal of the infusion line. My parents hovered in and out like a weather pattern that refuses to leave the forecast. I kept the file updated. I kept the car under Jenna's name. I said no. In late July, the doctor said words that live in my bone marrow now like the chemo lived in Ellie's. Relapse. Aggressive. Options that will hurt almost as much as they help. I nodded. Asked questions that made my voice wobble. I wrote down answers in my writing, which for once looked small.
We tried. Of course we did.
We did the next protocol. We did the thing where you root for cells you cannot see, like betting on raindrops to outrun the rest. Ellie slept more, hurt more, did more of that small, exact crying that children do when they don't want you to worry, but can't hide the pain. The world was reduced to hospital light and the click of the 4 pump and the way the nurse's shoes squeaked at 3 a.m. My parents came and left. My dad complained about cafeteria prices one day, and I laughed while crying because it was so exactly like him to turn this into a conversation about $5. Kayla took pictures when Ellie was sleeping and posted them with captions that made me nauseous. She had 2 new tattoos by August. One was a small heart on her wrist. The other was a phrase that looked like it was from a fake inspirational poster. I muted her for a month and then felt guilty and unmuted her, and then muted again when she took a selfie in the reflection of the hospital window with a caption, warrior ant and a sword emoji. People commented with hearts and look at you showing up, and I ate Cheez-Its and drank hospital coffee and wanted to throw my phone out the window. Ms. Patel brought me a pamphlet I hid under a magazine for 2 hours before I could look at it. They are not saying this is where you are, she said softly. They are saying this can exist alongside hope. It was for pediatric hospice. The word itself made my ribcage feel like it was a cage. I took it home. I cried over it into the dishwater. I folded it in half and put it in the folder under scary things. I didn't label the tab that. In late September, the doctor sat with us and took off her glasses. She had deep grooves at the corners of her mouth and eyes that had seen too much and still did not harden. She said we could keep trying, or we could pivot to comfort. She said both choices were love. She said it like it was an apology for the world being built this way. Tyler took my hand under the table and squeezed so hard my knuckles made a sound. We chose comfort. I still don't know if there's a word that can hold that. I can tell you what we did. We took Ellie home. We set up a bed in the living room so she could hear us and see the TV and see the front yard. We made a little basket of things that were only for her: lip balm, a soft blanket with a sloth on it, watercolor pencils that bled just right into the paper. Jenna came on her off days and learned how to help me change a dressing without making Ellie cry. Marcus set up a little speaker that could play the same song on repeat because sometimes kids need the same song 9 times in a row to feel the edges of the world. My parents approached this new world like tourists with complaints. The nurse who came every other day was bossy. The medical bed was ugly. The neighbor's dog barked too much and upset Ellie. I used new phrases. You can go now. That comment is not helpful. We're done for today. Kayla told me she wanted to be present. She came and lay on the floor by Ellie's bed and painted her nails a light purple and said it was my brave color. I loved her in moments like that. I hated her in moments when she kept asking if she could have the car on Tuesdays because I just hate the bus, like my life was a background for her convenience. I didn't tell anyone about the title transfer, not because I was ashamed, but because secrets get corrupted in our family. They become currency. The day it mattered that it was a secret. The last week, Ellie's breath took on that faraway sound like it was trying to dial a number and kept missing the last digit. She was barely awake. Tyler slept on the couch. I slept nowhere, which is to say I slept in thin sheets of time that folded around me like paper. The day she died, the sky was a kind of blue that would make you mad if you were in a movie. Too pure, too misleading. People say there's always a bird, always a breeze, always a moment where the room decides to loosen its hold on physics. For us, it was a lightness, a deep quiet that did not feel like absence, so much as space. I held her hand and said her name 3 times. Tyler cried in the way that made his shoulders shake. Jenna was there and pressed her forehead to mine. The hospice nurse stood near the door and watched with the solemnity of a person who is not numb but has built a tent around her heart for the rain. Mom and Dad came 30 minutes later. My mom wailed in that foghorn way, and I wanted to punch a wall because the house felt too small for her sorrow. My dad put his hands in his pockets and kept them there like he was guarding something. Kayla arrived like a wave and then sat abruptly in the chair, hands over her face. We did everything you do. We called who we needed to call. The funeral we planned was small because none of us could manage big. I kept the blue folder on the kitchen counter because I had learned to keep proof in reach. I put the obituary draft in a clear sleeve. I printed out the checklist Ms. Patel gave me for notifying schools and pediatricians and the county office for what happens next. It's bizarre, the bureaucracy of goodbye. It saves some of us. The reveal. The day after the funeral, the house filled with people moving in careful motions, saying the same 10 sentences everyone always says to be kind. It is an old choreography. Slice pie, pour coffee, take the garbage out, say you'll be around next week. The kitchen became a staging ground for small kindnesses and smaller wounds. It is true that in crisis, a single act can jackknife the day. It's also true that I should have seen it coming. Grief makes fog out of things you would otherwise dodge. My parents arrived together, faces washed smooth of anything but determination. I had the blue folder on the counter, open, not because I expected battle, but because I had turned into a person who likes the facts where she can see them. Sit, I said, because I am polite even when I don't have to be. We won't stay long, my mom said, putting a hand on my forearm for a second like permission. We know you need rest. We're going to run an errand for you, my dad said. We'll be back. What errand? I asked. Getting rid of the car in your way, he said. You don't need something like that now. You're not driving to the hospital all the time. Kayla can put it to use right away for work. We're helping. My fingers found the edge of the counter, held on.
No.
You don't even look at the big picture, he said, voice taking on that talk radio tone I always hated. This is family taking care of things. This is you taking my keys, I said. Kayla stepped out of the hallway where she'd been talking to her phone quietly. She looked freshened up, concealer under the eyes, a new coat of mascara. She held out her hand with a smile that had a glint of triumph despite the funeral black still lingering in her eyeliner. Thank you, she said, like she already owned it. My mom put the keys in her palm and said, for family, it is one thing to imagine a test. It is another to watch it arrive in your kitchen in the shape of your worst habits. No, I said. Do not touch that car. Don't do this now, my mom snapped, and for once the snap wasn't even sharp, it was tired. Don't make this ugly. We are trying to take one thing off your plate. Give me my keys, I said. We're not asking, my dad said. I can tell, I said, and felt that old panic rise and crest, and then do something odd flatten. I could see all of us suddenly like we were in a movie, like I was above us on a crane shot, circling. Kayla's hand with my keys. My mother's tight mouth, my father's chin, the blue folder, Jenna by the stove holding a spoon like an anchor. I don't think you understand, I said. Those aren't my keys. What? Kayla said, laughing a little. They look like my keys, I said. But they aren't mine. You trying to be poetic? My dad said, a sneer curling his lip. I'm being specific, I said. I reached for the blue folder and pulled out the sheet with the title transfer, the new registration. I signed the car away, I said. Legally. They froze. Shock reads the same on everyone. The face goes a little blank. The body tips forward. What does that mean? My mom asked, voice too high. It means the car is not mine, I said. It belongs to Jenna. You can't do that, my dad said automatically, as if his disapproval was the law. You can, Jenna said, stepping forward, voice steady as the spine of a book. We did. We went to the title office. We paid taxes. There's a notary stamp. If you want the car, you'll need to pay me a fair market price.
Cashier's check.
After I talked to my insurance agent. After consultations with Laura. Who? My dad barked. An attorney, I said. Another adult in the room. Unbelievable, my mom said, throwing up her hands. This is what grief does. It makes people selfish. We're trying to help Kayla. She's trying to get back on her feet. You don't need it. I stepped back from the counter and felt suddenly calm like the eye of a storm. It didn't even feel adrenal. It felt like the ground finally decided to stop trying to trick me into thinking it was a trampoline. Stop using my grief as a lever, I said, and it came out cleaner than I expected. You are not helping me. You are not helping Ellie's memory. You are not even helping Kayla. You are feeding the part of this family that takes and keeps taking. Kayla put the keys down like they were hot. So you what? You decided you're better than us. The words had a slant. They were the same words she'd use when I got a promotion or a nice dress from a thrift store that fit just right. I decided I am equal to you, I said. And equal means I can say no. Equal means I can own a car and not have it taken because I am family. Equal means I can recognize your manipulations and choose not to play. You have become cruel, my mom said. Maybe, I said. Or, I have finally become a person you cannot bend around your convenience. My dad took one step toward me in that way he does when he expects flinch and retreat. I didn't move. Jenna stepped to the side of me not as a barrier, but as a quiet witness. You cannot undervalue the power of someone standing next to you when a history of being alone tries to restart itself. I will call the police, my dad said. I'll say you stole your own car. You can, Jenna said. But I think the nice officers of Ridgeport will be interested in this paperwork. Also in the credit card in Erin's name that has never been hers. Also in the key you made for yourself after she changed the locks. My mom gasped. My dad's eyes flicked to her. Kayla looked at the floor. This is over, I said. Take home some lasagna if you want. Take your shoes off the rug when you step outside. And take your advice and your demands and your entitlement and give them to someone else. I am not a container for them anymore. My mom's lip trembled. We'll leave, she said. We know when we're not wanted. You're wanted when you can be kind, I said. Not when you can be in charge. They left. Kayla glared at me like I had taken the last donut she wanted for breakfast, and then looked at Jenna's name on the paper and couldn't process what it meant that the world she lived in had rules she couldn't charm her way around. I put the papers back in the folder and closed it, and the little flaps sound felt ceremonial. In the quiet afterwards, the house felt big. Like the walls had crept back out to where they were supposed to be before people we loved pushed them all in. I put my hand on the kitchen counter and breathed. Tyler walked in from the living room, hair sticking up, eyes red, body broadcasting what a night can do to a person who refuses to sleep. He looked at me and smiled a small smile. Jenna, he said, nodding at her. Nice work. I like paper, she said. I like you, I said. We all laughed then, not because anything was funny, but because laughter is a release valve. It doesn't fix grief. It gives it a chair. Fall out. There are people who disentangle gracefully. My parents are not those people. Over the next few weeks, they staged their small wars where they could. My dad called and left 3 voicemails in a row, each angrier than the last, ending with, "You will regret this," like a threat could make me 12 again. He showed up once at my work in the middle of a lunch rush and turned a conversation about refilling his iced tea into a complaint about how I had abandoned the family. Lori stood between us, her hand flat on the counter, the same hand she used to break apart bar fights back when she worked at the depot. "Rick, you're not welcome here," she said. "Leave." He called me a name that would have gotten a stranger thrown out. She raised an eyebrow like she was bored, and he left because even bullies know when they've entered a room that doesn't tolerate their kind. My mom imploded in the ways she knows. Facebook posts about betrayal and what people will do when they forget where they came from. Vague enough to get sympathy, obvious enough for everyone in our side of Ridgeport to know who she meant. A string of texts that varied from "I love you" to "you're cruel" in the span of 10 minutes. I stopped responding when she switched from apology to accusation without pivot. Kayla posted a picture with a caption about moving on without the people who hold you back, then posted a picture of a car key emoji and the word manifesting. I looked at it at 2 a.m. with a stiff neck and the kind of headache that makes light seem too bright. I put my phone down and realized that a whole category of tension in my shoulders had left since the reveal. This is how you measure the benefits of boundaries in grief. In micrograms. A week after the funeral, a Ridgeport police officer knocked on my door. The sight of a uniform makes most people still, and I am most people. He introduced himself, Officer Ramirez, and asked if my father, Rick, lived here.
He doesn't, I said.
He reported a stolen vehicle still registered to you, he said, reading off paperwork. I smiled, and it surprised me, the way a small, honest smile does. Then he's mistaken, I said. I can get the paperwork. I figured, he said, because small towns are small, and he was kind in the way people can be when they are tired of family grudges turning into their work. Mind if I take a look and check a box? I pulled out the folder, the title transfer, the registration, Jenna's insurance card. He studied them and nodded.
Thank you, he said.
Sorry for the inconvenience. It's not your fault, I said. Thank you for being decent. Hard to be anything else after a week like this, he said, and on his way out, he touched the photo of Ellie on the hall table with 2 fingers, an impulse, like a blessing that had nothing to do with anything but being a human being. Tyler hugged me like he was trying to hold my spine steady from the inside. We ate cereal on the couch and watched a cooking show, and I thought, this is what it's like when your house is yours, even when you're broken. Laura called to check in and told me I could get a protective order if my father kept showing up. We want to avoid escalation, she said. I know, I said. The thing is, escalation is their language. Calm is mine. Keep your notes, she said. Keep your folder. I didn't tell her I had sticky notes inside the folder now, a new set of tabs. Boundaries, attempts, follow-up. It looked like homework, and in a way it was. Grief is not linear. It is a Google map that thinks you need to take a left when you are in the middle of a lake. I cried at weird things. The smell of a strawberry Pop-Tart, the way towels felt rougher after months of washing them in hot water, the sight of a little girl in a grocery store choosing a cookie with serious eyes. I cried at the laundromat because a woman put in her quarters and then sat down and folded a towel with such care. I wanted to lay my head on her shoulder and say, "Please keep doing that forever, so the world keeps working." Jenna checked on me daily, without prying. Marcus dropped off baggies of sliced mango because my appetite had become stupidly specific. Tyler cleaned my oven, which is an intimacy I don't know how to explain as love, but it is. Ms. Patel texted links to grief support groups. I went once and sat in a circle and looked at everyone and didn't say a word, and then went home and slept for 3 hours with my shoes on. My mom bypassed me and tried to get to Ellie's memory in ways that belonged to her. She called the school and asked if she could sponsor a bench in honor of her granddaughter. Ms. Jensen, the school secretary who had a spine like a mile marker, told her kindly that she would need to coordinate with me. My mom posted a picture of Ellie on her page and asked for donations to a GoFundMe she started for final expenses. I called her. She didn't answer. I filed a fraud report with the platform and sent screenshots to Ms. Patel, who helped me navigate the suck of asking a website to take off money another person is raising for you. They shut it down. My mom sent me a text, "You are so ungrateful for help." I responded, "My child is dead and you are stealing." She didn't respond for 3 days. When she did, it was to send a picture of a religious quote with a sunset background. I muted her again. The one person I kept a tiny, cracked door open to was Kayla. Maybe because she is my sister. Maybe because I could see in her the way the world had formed around her like foam, buoyant, easy, and how it had made certain muscles weak. She texted me a week after the fight with my parents. "I want to talk without them." When she came over, she wore sweatpants and no makeup and sat cross-legged on the floor like she used to in 7th grade when we would talk about whether My Chemical Romance was overrated. "I'm not going to apologize," she said, and I looked at her and had to laugh because her sense of drama is relentless even when her audience is empty. "Okay," I said. "I just need a car for work," she said. "It's hard." "I know it's hard," I said. "Lots of things are hard." She huffed. "You're different now." "I'm the same," I said. "I'm just less available for being used." She winced like it was a slap. "I help," she said. "I do stuff for mom and dad all the time." "You should not be proud of that, as if it makes you a saint," I said gently. "You can help. You can also be used. Both can be true." She looked at me, and something moved in her eyes, like a fish near the surface of a lake. "I never wanted Ellie to be sick," she said, and her voice cracked on sick like the word hurt to say. "I never wanted any of this to be how we are." "Me neither," I said, and in that moment we were simply two girls in a house that had seen too much of everything. But this is how it is. And I can't be who I was. "What if I try?" she said. "What if I try to not be who I was either?" I nodded. "Try," I said. "But your try can't look like entitlement. It has to look like grief that isn't weaponized." She nodded like she understood, and then stared at the floor like she didn't. She didn't ask for the car. She asked if she could have one of Ellie's hats. I said yes. She picked the cat one. She rubbed the ears between her fingers like a talisman, and I felt my chest crack open, and then close, and then open again. Aftermath. If this were a story with a clean arc, I would tell you that everyone learned. That my parents showed up at the apartment in October with pie and apology, and did not ask for my keys ever again. That Kayla found a job she could keep and a way to be with me that didn't require me to contort. That grief softened into something like memory, and we all walked forward. The truth is messier and better. My dad and I didn't talk for months. He saw me at Kroger once and chose a different aisle. He came into the diner once and Lori's face made him leave. He sent a letter to Tyler that said I was not well. Tyler slid it across my table without comment, and I made a tiny airplane out of it and then burned it over the sink, because drama sometimes is medicinal. I learned the pleasure of blocking numbers. My mom and I had small, real moments. She sent me a picture of a hydrangea that bloomed in her yard like it remembered the soil from 20 years ago. I sent her a picture of the sky looking like it had been painted by a child with too much blue. She came by once with a foil packet of muffins and left them on the porch. I opened the door, and she was halfway to the car. She turned and looked at me and said, "I don't know how to be this mother," and left.
It was the truest thing she had ever said to me.
Kayla got a job at a chain salon in the strip mall by the movie theater. She sent me pictures of haircuts that looked like they took patience. She texted me when her manager said she was good with kids. She bought a used Corolla with a dent in the back and paid $600 in cash, and then asked to borrow $200 for the title and registration. I said, "I will give you $100 if you show me the paperwork." She sent pictures. I sent the $100. Progress looks like both of you doing a thing the other asked for. I started seeing Dr. Morgan, a therapist with a laugh that could make hard questions sit down for a minute. I said the word forgiveness once, and she looked at me like I had brought a very large, unnecessary suitcase into a small room. "What if the word is not forgiveness," she said, "but distance?" We built tools. Saying no with kindness. Saying yes to myself without qualifying it. Knowing when to let silence sit in a chair for a whole session. Knowing when to call Jenna and say, "I need to be near someone who knows me, so I don't spend this hour having to explain everything." The Camry, Cherry, stayed in my life until spring. Jenna held the title. I held the wheel. Every time I put the key in and turned it, it felt like an act of allegiance to the person I had become. In March, Jenna and I drove to the title office again and transferred it back to me. She kept a lien on it for $1, a joke and a tether because we liked the feeling of a net. Laura high-fived us in the parking lot. We ate tacos in the car and listened to an old playlist that had a song Ellie loved, and neither of us cried because sometimes not crying is a victory. In June, I sold Cherry. It felt like a graduation. There was a woman in her 40s who needed it more, a single mom with a kid who loves dinosaurs. I hugged the car in my mind and said thank you. I bought a used Subaru with decent mileage and all-wheel drive because winters are a thing, and I wanted something that said stability without saying fancy. I went back to school in the fall, one class at a time at Ridge County Community College. Social work. It felt right, like taking all the tiny notebooks and turning them into something that could be a ladder for someone else. Ms. Patel wrote me a recommendation that made me cry in the parking lot between the lines of a paragraph about resilience and clarity. On the one-year day, the sky was blue again, because sometimes life really does like to repeat itself in ways that make you clench your fists at the clouds. Tyler and I went to the park with Jenna and Marcus and sat on a picnic table and ate the sandwich Ellie always asked for. We weren't trying to create a ritual. We were trying to breathe, and it happened to look like a picnic. When we went home, there was a box on my porch. It was for my mom. It had a note on top, "For you if you want." Inside were photos I had never seen, snapshots of me as a kid, Kayla in her homecoming dress, my dad at 20 holding a fishing pole like it might make him a man. At the bottom there was a hospital bracelet, Ellie's name in small block letters. My mom had labeled the back with a date. There was a hat with cat ears that looked worn in a new way, the edges softened. I cried and didn't hide it. Then I wrote my mom a card that said thank you for these. That was all. She called me, and I let it go to voicemail. She said, "I am trying," and for the first time in a long time, I believed her. Epilogue artifact. Voice memo, recorded in my kitchen, 1.5 years after Ellie. Hey, Bug. If you were here, you'd be 6.5, and I think you'd be doing that thing you did where you pretend you're a cat until someone takes you seriously, and then you immediately switch back to being a kid. You taught me the rule of the world I am trying to live now. Be honest and be ridiculous in the same hour. People will adjust. Today I made your noodles the way you like them, and some of them fell on the floor, and I left them there for a minute because I could imagine you scolding me like, "Mom, ants," and I needed to hear your voice in my head one more time. You missed the day I told your grandparents no.
It was a big day.
I thought it would make me feel like I had burned a bridge and would be standing alone on a cliff. It made me feel like I had finally walked back to the part of the river where the rocks are flat and the water is shallow, and you can sit with your feet in and feel the world be quiet for a second. I think you would have loved Jenna's new dog. He is badly behaved and looks at me like he understands taxes. I think you would have made him sit even when he didn't want to. You had that way about you, firm and kind. I am trying to have that way about me now. I went to class today. I sat in a row of people who were all trying to learn how to not be the person in the room who gets loud with their advice, but the person who sits with someone else and says, I will be here with you while you figure it out. I am good at the second thing. I want to be better at it. You made me a student of small braveries. I love you in all the tenses. I love you when I remember your marble head and your dinosaur blanket. I love you when I imagine you at the park in sneakers that light up. I love you in the future I will never get, which is the hardest one. I am going to keep the car keys where they belong. I am going to keep the papers where I can get to them. I am going to let people in who bring groceries and leave advice at the door. Okay, that's it for now. Don't be mad, I played your song on Jenna's speaker twice in a row. Or be mad. I can handle it.
Mom.
What I learned. Paper is love. Not the Hallmark kind. The adult kind. Titles, registrations, a notarized stamp, a list of meds, a budget you keep, a letter you save. It's not romance, it's risk management. When people argue with your fog, they can't argue with your file. No is a full sentence. It's not mean. It's a guardian at the gate of a life that would otherwise get swallowed by other people's appetites. You can say no to your parents. You can say no at a funeral. You can say no even when your voice shakes. It becomes easier and also weirdly kinder. The smallest voices will tell you the truth you need. Ellie's saying she felt like a marble held me together. Ms. Patel reminding me to apply for a gas card saved me a week's worth of panic. Officer Ramirez touching my kid's photo with 2 fingers was the gesture that made me believe the town I lived in wasn't just a map of resentments. Found family isn't a betrayal of blood. It's an extension of it, what blood should have been. It's someone who will sit next to you while you tell your parents to leave. It's someone who stands by the stove with a spoon like a sword and says, "We're not doing this," in a voice that makes a room behave. Boundaries cost. Boundaries give back even more. You might lose people. You might lose versions of yourself you thought you needed. You gain breath. You gain a house that feels like your own. You gain sleep. You gain the ability to hear your kid's voice in your own. Grief will remake you. Let it. Not into some saint. Into someone who knows what matters. Into someone who refuses to use grief as a weapon and refuses to let anyone else sharpen theirs on you. Receipts over rumors. Keep the texts. Keep the timeline. Keep the notes. Not because you want to win a fight, but because you want to know you weren't crazy when the room tries to convince you the paint has always been this color. In a town like mine, in a family like mine, integrity is not a trait. It is a practice. You can do it at a title office, at a kitchen counter, at a graveside, in a therapist's office. The practice is what saves you. And sometimes, if you are lucky, it also saves someone who is watching you be brave.